Okay, now we are back with actual books. But we're also not straying too far away from the video game territory we've been in for the past month. But before we actually begin with today's subject matter, let me explain the FNAF franchise for those of you who've managed to avoid the internet for the past year, and maybe a few GameStops here and there. The FNAF franchise, also known as the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, starts with an indie video game obviously titled Five Nights at Freddy's. It leads into four mainline games, an RPG, this book, an upcoming movie, and an upcoming sixth game that may or may not be out at the time of the release of this video. I'm going to be honest, I'm only an onlooker on this particular franchise. I do like the story for the most part, because the games have this kind of weird, creepy atmosphere around them, but I'm going to say this straight up, I have not played the games, and I basically never will. So what about the plot of these games that I like so much? Well, you play as a number of various night guards, except for in the fourth game where you play as a kid, and obviously the RPG, trying to survive 5 nights against a group of killer animatronics that stalk the halls of the restaurant that you're working at night, again except for the fourth game when they're stalking your home. There's some backstory about a serial killer killing children at various restaurants and stuffing dead bodies into suits and ghosts and other weird crap. A lot of it, as practically the entire plot is, up to interpretation and theory. And yes, I've seen the Game Theory episodes about this. You don't have to mention them or recommend them. I've already seen all of them, and I'm probably going to watch them all again later. Yeah, so again, the basic plot of this entire franchise is up to a lot of interpretation, so everyone has their own beliefs about what happened, when, where, and how. I personally like to think that MatPat's pretty right on this subject matter, but I honestly couldn't care less about the official timeline and whatnot. So yeah, we're almost 2 minutes in and we've only been talking about the game so far. Now I think it's a good time to switch track to talking about the actual book we're here to discuss. The book was written by series creator Scott Cawthon with the assistance of Kira Breed Wisley. If I pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry, but I really can't pronounce it too good. First off, there's another name I call this book. I call it FNAF the Screenplay. So yeah, the story of the games being a lot of it being up to interpretation, I honestly believe that a lot of the movie will be based off something like this book, which has a much clearer plot, which I have to say is probably a strong advantage over the games themselves. So yeah, about that plot. Similar to the games, a serial killer killed a number of children at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. 10 years later, Charlie, the daughter of the owner of Freddy's, returns to the town of Hurricane, Utah alongside her 6 other friends to attend the ceremony of the anniversary of the event. Led by a combination of nostalgia and curiosity, the group seeks out their old stomping grounds, finding the abandoned, derelict restaurant and giving in to their memories. All the while, something sinister begins working in the background. A supernatural presence still haunts this place, and with the killer still on the loose, of course things are going to start colliding. First off, I want to mention that the really scary stuff doesn't really start happening until the last night, as beforehand it's all the build-up and atmosphere of the restaurant, giving a feeling of foreboding in the area. While it's a minor complaint that the series based around killer robots doesn't really start with the killer robots until the final third, it's an understandable and believable reasoning, considering the fact they have to keep coming back night after night. So having the killer robots attack them on the first night would kind of make their returns harder to believe. And yes, it's a comment everyone has about the games too. Aside from that, as stated earlier, there are 7 main characters, alongside each one getting a viewpoint, and that's not going into the side characters and the villain. And yes, Charlie is the main character and the one given the most focus, but still, everyone's given a bit of focus, leading to a bit of confusion here and there about all the important matters of the actual plot. Next off, the horror aspect isn't what you really expect from a horror story, or at least typical horror stories. The kill count is relatively small, at only about 2 people, unlike most of the other horror stories I've read, where you'd expect half the main cast to be stuffed in their suits by the end of this. Hell, while reading this, I thought that was the whole point of having such a large cast of characters, that you could have someone to replace them when they all die. And finally, there's the main villain. As one could guess from this franchise, the villain, of course, is the original murderer, also known by fans of the franchise as the Purple Guy. And with an opportunity like this, you'd expect there to be some form of nuance to this guy, an explanation about why he does what he does, or at least something to kind of give us a reason to really either detest this guy or believe something about him that is just not just there. But nope. The villain here is incredibly generic and not all that interesting. Again, we're never really given a reason as to why he started killing children in the first place, or his obsession with the animatronics. It's hinted that he might have been driven crazy by an accident in the spring-locked suits, but again, it's never really explained all that much about him. He's just ultimately there to service the main villain, and the reason why the restaurant starts going crazy at the end of it all. Even his death isn't all that satisfying, considering the fact that he is killed off by animatronics at the end. Overall, the villain is pretty weak and the mystery is pretty simple and easy if you're even slightly aware of the franchise. And honestly, who else is going to buy this book? But I have to say, it's still an enjoyable read. The book, despite its 500-page length, is a pretty quick and easy read with tons, and I mean tons, of imagery that spreads throughout the entire book. Sight, smell, sounds, and even the taste of the air is vividly described, painting a picture of how desolate areas are. Again, I say this book is a good read, and a fast one at that. Now, doing research for this book, I discovered 3 more books, admittedly YA novels, on the way thanks to Scholastic. If they're the same quality as this book, I may consider picking them up, but let's hope that they improve on some of the flaws of the original, and that the movie also does the same.